Everybody that's in this country has a right to dignity and respect, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how putting a 17-year-old child who's never been away from home into the streets of Hamilton in a shelter, how that possibly could in any way show respect and dignity, especially towards a child with a diagnosis of autism.
By Tom Petty.
Going on there?
Yeah, I got a huge sunburn.
Where were we? Do you remember?
St. Martin's.
We were at St. Martin's. Look at you. We suspected that Chris had some sort of developmental disability within about the second, third year, but he didn't officially get diagnosed till he was about 5 years old. In his younger years, he was like your typical 5 or 6 year old, other than he had some social issues.
We had a lot of good neighbors. We had especially one of the nicest neighbors who lived, that house there used to be lived by an old man. He was a retired police officer. So I used to ride my bike up this crest, and I used to ride all the time up here. That house there was my friend from school.
Grade 8 to grade 9 was probably the most difficult time. I saw firsthand what was happening to him on a daily basis at school. I think that was the last time in my life I cried. I came in, saw these kids on top of him with his tie wrapped around his neck and his mouth, pouring pop over top of him, with him screaming, and nobody cared. Nobody did anything. I took him out of there, we never went back. Grade 9 was a very good year for Chris. They were able to include him in the mainstream. He was in the Essentials program at the time. His grades were good enough in grade 9 that they actually put him up to the next level into the applied stream. Grade 10, I started noticing a lot of problems with Chris, struggling going to school, refusing to go to school, behavioral problems, nightmares started beginning. He was just absolutely so embarrassed about these YouTube videos that he didn't want to go to school. Because he didn't want to go to school, the pressure, the anxiety, he ended up in the hospital.
Oh my.
And at that point, the doctor from Oakville Trafalgar thought it would be good for one semester for him to go into a group home with other kids his age where they could help him with some of his social difficulties. So when I'm told to put him there, I'm assuming that this is the place for him and he's going to get the best care. And in fact, it was the opposite. That particular experience ended up probably being our downfall. And we began to end up having some major social and behavioral problems because of the inappropriate fit. He was moved to a different city. He was put in a different school. They were ill-prepared for him. If anything, it exasperated the issues that he already had. Autistic people need predictive settings. Chris made allegations that he might as well just kill himself. I was called and told over the phone while I was at work that this is what had happened and that they handed Chris his OHIP card because he had threatened to commit suicide, and they had told him to go ahead and walk down to the hospital and admit himself on his own. I brought him home because it became pretty clear that there are no other alternatives as far as housing for him, so he came home. They really weren't too receptive to him coming back, and after a month there was some social difficulties, and they wanted to do a risk assessment, and they said pending the risk assessment he couldn't come to school. And when he wasn't able to go to school because the school had made the decision that he couldn't be there, there were no services to keep him at home. So at that point, the community services, the best option was a homeless shelter. It was probably one of the worst times of our lives having him in the homeless shelter, never knowing from one day to the next if he was going to be alive.
We thought he was coming in here for a night or two, and now we went from a night or two to several months, ending up in a men's home shelter downtown Hamilton, after several other shelters across the GTA, and then going missing on the streets of Hamilton, where I'm told the police are looking for him and we don't know if he's alive.
Now all of a sudden, rather than we just don't have a place for him and lack of funding for respite, it now became we may have a dead autistic child on the streets of Hamilton, which I was saying was going to happen, which these people all said was going to happen.
His safety was finally acknowledged by social service workers and by the ministry that maybe he was at risk, but not until he went missing completely and we thought he was dead. You can't possibly get much lower than that.
We were dealing with, which a lot of parents now are beginning to see. I mean, we've got a lot of services in this province looking at early intervention and giving them IBI and ABA, but these guys are going to hit adolescence and puberty, and we can't cure autism, and we have inadequate respite services for these guys to be at home and have the support within the home. It's minimal, and if the family runs into crisis, this is what the alternative is, rather than helping parents within the home.
We discovered that homeless shelters are considered a viable option for children and youth and young adults with disabilities as a place for residences.
We have no idea what's next for Chris. We are where we are right now, and we take it one day at a time.